Conversations and small talk can be tricky to navigate. And for me, the most uncomfortable part about it was trying to talk about myself. I found that it's always easy enough to let someone else carry the conversation just by asking them some good questions and showing interest. But when it came to talking about myself or sharing what I do or what I was interested in, I found that really hard, and it would make me feel quite tense, and I found that I would ruin a lot of conversations when they got to that point. Talking about yourself is especially hard if you're introverted in nature, if you're lacking self-confidence, or if you're socially anxious. And for me, all three of those things played a big role into why I was never felt very comfortable talking about myself or doing small talk. But over the past few years, I've made a lot of progress, and so I kind of want to share some of those things. All right, first, let's cover why you need to talk about yourself. First off, it's a prerequisite for getting to know someone. You can't build a relationship when only one person is talking and you don't share anything about yourself. So it needs to be that back and forth of sharing and exchanging information for you to actually build a connection. If you can't do that, you'll never get past the first initial hello. And I think avoiding this part of communication or small talk where you have to talk about yourself, avoiding that will make it harder to trust you or for someone to actually be engaged with you because you're not even sharing anything about yourself. And second off, it's obviously required in any professional avenue. You go to a job interview, they're going to ask you to tell them about yourself, what you do, your skills, your weaknesses, all that kind of stuff. So it's important to get decent or good at talking about yourself and being comfortable with doing that. So now to some quick tips that have helped me make some progress in those social situations. And the tip number one, or mindset shift, is to not treat it like an interrogation. And what I mean by that is I've found that in the past when people would ask me what I did for work or my hobbies or anything about me, I would get very tense and struggle to open up, and almost felt like I was being graded on my response when I'm sure my conversation partner was just curious to know a little thing about me. They weren't necessarily trying to interrogate me and make sure I gave the right answer. So shifting that mindset from it being, an interrogation to it being a chance to connect with someone and keeping it lighthearted and playful makes a big difference. Branching off of that last point, it is a great chance to try and connect with someone. So I've found that trying to, as I stay lighthearted and I allow people to be interested in me, I allow questions, I try and respond to them, and I just try and be honest and casual. And that has worked really well, and changing the mind shift from being so tense to a bit more laid back. And you're not getting graded on your responses or your small talk ability. Tip number two, one of the hardest ones for me, was to show myself some respect and actually own a little bit of space. So as I mentioned, if you're socially anxious or you're lacking in self-confidence, this part especially is really hard to do because you probably don't really have that much belief in yourself anyway. At least I know that really impacted my ability to talk about myself, is because I just thought that no one cared, or that what I did wasn't interesting, or that I didn't really have the right to take up that space and talk about myself. This part does take time, and I think you can intentionally work on it, but it does come with a lot of factors outside of communication, like changing your mindset about yourself and building that confidence. That really makes a big impact on this point. Part of showing yourself respect is being honest and genuine. So really owning what it is you do or your hobby. That plays a big part in showing your self-respect. I know I used to struggle with this, trying to explain what I did for work, or maybe if I was part-time, I'd be embarrassed to say that I only worked a little bit, or that I had this hobby of gaming when, I wanted people to think that I maybe had a more exciting hobby or more exciting job. But I think being honest and really owning what you do and just accepting it is a great tool to use. And it helps build that self-confidence as well. So let's say even if you're unemployed, you just say, I'm unemployed. This is the kind of jobs that I'm looking for. I'm kind of doing this or whatever. You just be honest. And most of the time, people aren't going to criticize you and be like, he's unemployed or he does this job or whatever, what a loser, there's going to probably be interested. If the conversation is getting to this point, they're obviously showing interest in you, so they're not going to necessarily judge you. So getting over that and showing yourself some respect, for me, made a big, big difference. Number 3 is to be concise. Everyone knows what it's like to be a conversational hostage. You have someone just rambling on about shit that you could not care about at all. I've put myself in this position many times because, as I said, it's really easy to let someone else carry the conversation. And if you just keep acting like you're interested, people can go on, and then you end up being in this 20-minute conversation that you're like, oh my God, what a drain. Like, this is so boring to listen to this other person. So don't become a conversational hostage. Make sure that you do respond and do talk about yourself, but do keep it concise. Don't ramble on yourself. Don't turn someone else into a conversational hostage. I think part of this is being concise is also flipping the conversation back onto others. That's a great way to, talk about yourself, but avoid doing it for a long time if it makes you feel uncomfortable. I use this all the time. I might talk about my hobbies, say, small talk, talking to someone. Oh yeah, I'd like to play video games. I like to do this. I like to do that. Oh, have you ever got into games? Were you into games as a kid or something? And then you allow the conversation to build naturally off of what you were saying, but you also then can flip it back onto them. So it's more of a back and forth rather than it being too much about you or too much about them. You can kind of keep it, your responses short and sweet and still get a lot of value out of both sides. The last point would be to actually engage in small talk and go to social events and try and talk about yourself. When people ask, actually talk about yourself. That's, the most actionable step that you can do is to actually do it. So that would be the last step. I know it's, as a socially anxious person, it's easy to try and just avoid all of these kind of things or to even label yourself as someone who doesn't enjoy small talk. But again, as I said, it's a prerequisite for getting to know someone. You need to do small talk and you need to be good at talking about yourself. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to build relationships with people, or at least that's what I've found. Once I've started to own these facts a little more, my social life has, really skyrocketed. I'm able to go into an event where I don't really know many people, and although I still feel very, very awkward and tense, I can at least have a few good conversations and not be a total outcast. Hope that resonates with some of you. Thank you again for watching.